Hi, I'm Tiff. Welcome back to Tiff Reads Books, where I read books and I talk to you about them. This is my Saturday review, and normally I would completely spoil a book that I hated. But I haven't had one really this month that I haven't already talked to you about. So the last book I did a full spoiler, I hated it, vlog / review for was The Ministry of Time. You can see that one up on my channel. I was going to talk to you today about Don't Let the Forest In by C.G. Drews, but I ended up really liking it, and then I kind of gushed about it in my weekly wrap-up. So if you want to see how I felt about that in a non-spoiler context, it's about 8 or 9 minutes of a review, you can check that out in my week 4 October weekly chat. So instead, we're going to talk about a series that I just finished, and I am very, very excited about it. And I can't fit my hand around it because I have small hands, because I'm short. So I just finished the Bloodsworn Saga, and I'm obsessed. Like, I am obsessed. So I had an arc for Fury of the Gods, which is the 3rd book, and I started it, and then I was like, oh, this is really good. I just kind of want to wait for my pre-order book to come in and finish it with the pre-order. So that's what I ended up doing, and so I finished it last night, and oh my god, the ending of this series is so fantastic. I think it's the best end to a series that I have read this year. Because look, I love Robin Hobb. I have become a Robin Hobb girly this year. I love Jacqueline Carey, her Kushiel's Legacy, the first trilogy. Obsessed. However, none of those endings, none of those 3rd books. So Kushiel's Avatar was like a 4 instead of a 5, where the first 2 books were a 5. Assassin's Quest was, I think, a 5, but I also felt a little unsatisfied at the end, the last little bit of the last chapters. I was like, ah. And then because the 2nd book for me was like an oh my god 5, and the 3rd book was like it's a 5. And then the same with the Live Ship Trader series. I love the 2nd book, the Mad Ship. Absolutely obsessed with Mad Ship. But the 3rd book kind of let me down a little bit. It was still a 5, but it was just like, it didn't have that magic that the 2nd book has. And that kind of was like disappointing in a little bit, because I think Robin Hobb just, her endings suffer a little bit, but the rest of the book being so good makes up for it, unless you're an endings girly, and I'm not always. If the rest of the book is super, super good, I can let it go. So, but this, John Gwynne can write an ending. My god, can this man write an ending? I have to start this off by saying I don't necessarily view myself as someone who cries a lot. I'm more emotional in my 30s than I was in most of my life, and I think becoming like 35 made me soft. Like, after 35 though, I've started becoming emotional over certain things in books, and that is new for me. But I'm still not extremely, like, it takes a lot or very specific things, and I need to show you, because this book, I didn't start marking them until after 60%, but you see all these little blue tabs? There's 8 of them in there. And that is the number of things that made me teary-eyed. I didn't like cry, but I felt like, you know, pressure. I was like going to cry. If I'd been listening to an audio, I might have, because people's emotional tone in their voices tends to get me sometimes. So yeah, that's just from page 355 to the end, actually. I think I started doing it at 75%. Because there was at least 5 others in here. There's no less than like 15 times, I think, that I nearly cried or cried. And not always just because things were really sad, but sometimes things were just very emotionally overwhelming. Like, good things happened, but they were so emotionally overwhelming that this book wrecked me and then put me back together. And I think that's such a thing to be said for a book that can do that. And that's the thing that made the ending for me, that made this a 5-star series, is that it not only wrecked me, but then it put me back together. And I don't know how, I did not know how much I needed to be put back together in the ways that this book put me back together. So this is my, like, hands down, absolutely obsessed with John Gwynne. I will be reading his other books, not this year because I really want to get to my shelves. So I'm really trying to just read things that I already own now. So now that I've gushed about this series, let me give you a little, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a little bit of a plot breakdown for the first book of this series. And then if you don't want to be spoiled in anything, you can go away. And I'll appreciate that you watched this far. If you don't mind some minor spoilers, because I don't want to give away everything, but if you don't mind some minor spoilers, not big plot things, but just things that aren't revealed to you in here, then you can stick around, and I'll make sure that if I do a very, very big warning, I will put a thing up here. So I'm going to try to keep this super quick, though. I don't want to gush about every single thing because I just want people to read this series. So before I go into the plot, though, actually, one thing that I need to show you. This one doesn't have it. So this one doesn't have it, but these other two have a glossary, which I think is really cool. So these are tabbed because I did a buddy read, and so with the first two, so I tabbed which chapters I needed to read each week to keep up with the buddy read. And then I did have a couple of things underlined that just really stuck out to me. There's not very many because I don't super annotate, but I did highlight characters. So we have, in the beginning of this, I love this, we have a pronunciation guide, which I think is super cool. And then we have the map. Of course, you can't have a high fantasy, an epic fantasy without a map, but we have a cast of characters. And I love that there's a cast of characters because if you see this is just a list of people in one of the mercenary bands. And that's not even all of them because they continue on to the next page. And then we have everyone in the Bloodsworn and the Raven Feeders. And then we have these others in here as well, like all the other characters. We have such a big cast of characters, including like some creatures. And I love that we have this reference to flip back to, because when you get this huge cast, and some of the names do sound kind of similar, especially because we have a lot of Jarls, which is essentially they're a land holding lord. So instead of lord, it's Jarl. And so we have a lot of them that start with Jarl. And I know when I did the buddy read, some people were like confused. They were like, how many people are named Jarl? And I was like, no, it's a title. It's not a name. It's a title. It's not their first name, because they're called Jarl and then their last name. And then we have, for example, Helga and her son Hakon. So Helga and Hakon. And then we have we have Skalk and also Skald. And we have Brack and Barak. So we have some similar names. So this glossary is really nice. The other thing that it has that a lot of people are gushing about is it has this what has gone before chapter, which is honestly like, if you ever watch Supernatural and they would have the road so far, that's what this is. And it's so good. It's so helpful. I didn't necessarily need it too much because I went from book to book to book. But every now and then I was like, wait, what book did that happen in? And I could flip back to that. So that's kind of why I was like, I wanted to hold this book in my hand. So I just needed to point those out before we go on. Okay. So this is the first series I've finished this year that I get to hold in my hands. And that feels like something. Because all the other fantasy series I finished them on audio, and I don't own a physical copy. I haven't got shelf trophies yet because I'm running out of space and I need to figure out what I want to prioritize, but that's besides the point. So anyway, here is your brief plot of these books. In the first book, we're following three characters. We're following Orca, and Orca, we're introduced to her when she's out hunting with her son, Brecca, who's 10 or 11, I can't remember which one. He's young, and she's teaching him how to hunt, and she's with her husband Thorkel, and they come along something very concerning, and that kind of kicks off Orca's story, their concerning thing means they need to go talk to their Jarl and let them know what has happened in the homestead next to theirs. And so they start making this journey to go to that, and then some things go down at the big meeting, and it's kind of a mess that kicks everything off. So that's Orca's story. And I think because enough people have said this, I'm gonna go ahead and say it because that's all I knew about this book, is that Orca's son ends up getting kidnapped, and her quest is to save her son. She's on her quest to go and find him. And that ends up connecting her with these other characters throughout the story. The second chapter we get is from Varg, or second or the third, is from Varg, and he is an escaped thrall. A thrall is a slave, somebody who's owned, it's an enslaved person who is owned by, not even doesn't have to be a jarl, just somebody with money. Anybody can buy an enslaved person. And then they're just allowed to be treated like property. So Varg has escaped this, and we aren't quite sure how. He either escaped or he was freed. His past is unclear. He's very unreliable as a narrator in his first few chapters. And he's looking for a Sether witch who can do a ritual for him so that he can find out what happened to his sister. That's his quest. And he discovers that the Bloodsworn have a Sether witch, but the Sether witch of the Bloodsworn only does magic for the members of the Bloodsworn. So Varg's like, cool, how do I get into the Bloodsworn? And thank you, Hugin. Okay, Varg's like, cool, how do I get into the Bloodsworn? And look at him side-eyeing me, Jesus. And he actually finds out that they're having trials today. So Varg's like, all right, what do I gotta do? He's gotta fight this guy named Einar Half-Troll, just this big guy, and he's gotta win. He does not win. And so he's like, well, shit, what do I gotta do now? And then he ends up getting rescued by them, and it's a whole thing. So he does end up with the Bloodsworn, and then we're following him as he is trying to join the Bloodsworn so that he can get this spell for his sister. And he learns about friendship along the way. That's kind of Varg's story, and I think that's why he ends up being everybody's favorite, because he doesn't know what it's like to have friends or have people care about him. He's just he's a cinnamon roll. Varg is a cinnamon roll that could kill you. That's honestly, he's a cinnamon roll, but he could also kill you. So that's Varg's story. And then we have Elvar. And Elvar, it does say on the back that she is a noble woman pursuing battle fame. So, but that's kind of, it feels like a reveal in the book, but it says it on the back. So Elvar is young, she's like 18, and her whole goal in life is to have, what? To have songs sung about her. That's her whole goal in life. So she is with the Battle Grim. He's gonna start whining now because I'm talking and he wants food. He had dinner. He's just been looking for second dinner for about half an hour. So he's fine. He's just dramatic. Where was I at? Elvar. So Elvar just wants to win what they call her fair fame. And so she's with the Battle Grim, and she's just trying to be a boss, essentially. She has her companion Grend, who has been by her side her whole life, and eventually these three parties join because a war is coming. And the back of the book says, all three will change the course of the world as it once more falls under the shadow of the gods. Because there's a whole thing with this dragon. So that is the non-spoiler thing. These characters' stories get woven together, and then they part and they come back together, and they part and they eventually come back together. And the way that it's done is very, very good. We are always doing something in this book, in all of these books. You know how sometimes you get to the end book and the end battle is like 10 pages and you're like, well, I'm glad I made it all this way for that. This one, the battle starts here on page 359, and it goes until the end, page 528. There's other little battles in between, but the big battle is like this much of the book is the big battle. So that's a lot of battle. And we get it from multiple perspectives, which is really fun. So that's my non-spoiler bit. I recommend these if you like epic fantasy, high fantasy, and you want something a little bit different that feels a little fresh, because this is based on Norse mythology. So it's slightly different than our standard British that we normally get, which is kind of nice. And I just really like these, so I definitely recommend. Okay, mild spoilers. So essentially in these stories, we have gods. So this is the dragon god Ligrifa. And Ligrifa is a terror. And essentially, we have a mercenary party, the Raven Feeders, who are trying to awake Ligrifa. And that is their whole goal. And they end up pissing off a lot of people. They end up basically making it so that Elvar wants to kill them, Varg wants to kill them, Orca wants to kill them, all of the Bloodsworn. So, very important aspect. Somebody on Reddit asked, they're like, I read this book, but I can't remember if the dragon on the cover is actually in the book or if that was just a thing to make you read it. And people were like, my guy, you did not read the book if you don't remember the dragon, because it was kind of a big deal. So it kind of is a big deal. So essentially, we find out, so Orca's son gets kidnapped and she hunts him down. She tears through so many cities to find him. Following her, she has Lif, who is the son of a fisherman, Lif and Mord, his brother. They're the sons of a fisherman who, when they were having their meeting, I can't remember what they call it. I can't remember what they call their gathering, but they have it to discuss what they're going to do about the person who was killed at the homesteading next to Orca's and their son who was kidnapped. And this fisherman guy ends up challenging Guthvar, who is the son of the the nephew of the Jarl, Jarl Sigrun. So he ends up challenging Guthvar and he wins, and he's not supposed to kill him, but he gets a little like aggressive, and then the thrall to Jarl Sigrun kills Lif and Mord's father. And that's when we find out this thrall is she's not a berserker, she's an Ulfethnar, which means she is she's a wolf berserker. So she has the blood of the wolf god in her, and that can come out during a battle rage where she's like, has some wolf tendencies. So we learn as the story goes on that there are berserkirs, which are bears. There, I can't remember, hund or something, which are hounds. There are those who have the fox and the rabbit, or the fox and the hare and the hawk. And there's others too. There's the Sether witches have Snakka, who is the father of all the gods. He is a very large serpent. And so those who have Snakka's blood are Sether witches. So Sether witches have their magic naturally, and then we have Galdermen, who are allowed to not be thralled, because we find out that anybody who has the blood of a god in them can be thralled. So, which is shitty. They can be thralled, but Galdermen can learn their magic, so they are not thralled because they're not tainted by the blood of a god. So we find out that Orca is a badass wolf bitch. Orca, I get really frustrated with some of the character art of her because they show her as a muscular, kind of slim-ish tall woman, but literally in here, Orca is bigger than a lot of the men. Orca is wide. Orca doesn't fit through certain doorways. Like, Orca, they give her this like massive brynja, which is a male shirt, essentially, a coat, like a chainmail shirt. And they're like, oh, it's this really big dude, so it might fit you. Like, and it's like still tight on her, that even if it comes down like a little bit to like her mid thigh, it's like still kind of tight because she's big. She's very large. She's not just like tall, she's like wide, and like she is, I always say she is strong like bear woman. And yeah, like if you've ever seen some of the like weightlifting, like competitive lifting women, that is Orca. So a lot of the fan art of her, I think, tends to show her slim and trimmer than she actually is described of in the book. But that's beside the point. It's just something that bothers me. So we find out that Orca's tainted and that she used to be part of the Bloodsworn. Not only was she part of it, she was their chief. So everyone in the Bloodsworn knows her. There are two other characters in the Bloodsworn that I really like. Svik, who has the blood of the fox in him, and Roikia, who is another Ulfithnar. So I really like the two of them. Roikia is very aggressive and but not in like a mean way. She just has a very distinct way that she views the world. She views the world semi kind of black and white, and she's very much about like fighting and for what she views as the right thing. So she ends up training Varg. She's, I believe, the one who gives him the name No Sense. So he's Varg No Sense, and it fits him very, very well throughout the book. I always say that like he needs a lot of help, I feel like, to get through daily tasks. So Svik is kind of your comedy relief. He does a lot of your bardic tales. He talks a lot about what's going on in the world. He's teaching Varg about how life in the Bloodsworn works, and so therefore you are learning how life in the Bloodsworn works. Elvar is out to get him after that. So that's a more in-depth overview, but it still doesn't spoil everything. So in Hunger of the Gods, we get two new perspectives, and Orca ends up training him. Like, I think she's training both of them in the Shadow of the Gods, and then she ends up training Lif even more, and he ends up becoming a big part of Orca's life in this book, along with her two Vaesen, which are these creatures that Ligrifa created. And Orca has two Vaesen that are loyal to her, Spurt and Vesli. Vesli is like a flying kind of bat-like, almost humanoid type bat-like creature, and Spurt is essentially almost like flying centipede with a scorpion stinger. He's an interesting creature, and the two of them end up helping out Orca a lot. Orca also ends up making friends with a couple of very giant ravens that play an important part in the rest of the book. This one is a very good second book. It's mostly getting people where they need to be, but in this one, Glornir, who is the chief of the Bloodsworn, his wife has been stolen, and he's out for blood to get her back. And so we're doing a lot of that in this one. And then that brings us down to Iskadan, another realm. We spend a little bit of time there, and we get a bigger party to come back with. And that is a very big thing. Orca discovers where Brekka is in this one, and she takes down so many people to get him back. So many people. It's absolutely wild. This is where I'm not going to spoil too much because I'm not going to spoil too much. So something happens at the end of this one that is very dramatic, and I'm going to not say actually anything about this one because I don't want to even hint at what it might be. But I'm going to say that all of our parties end up coming together to fight the dragon. And that's what most of this book is about, is fighting the dragon. And it is about Elvar learning and growing and becoming like actually a really good leader and doing an amazing thing that was absolutely necessary for the world. So I actually don't think, I haven't really spoiled too much. There's so much in these, but that's the best I needed to be able to give some of the plot. I think there's still really big reveals in here. This one has some huge reveals that I did not see coming, and then when they happened, I was like, well, damn. Like, should I have seen that coming? I don't know. I honestly still don't know. So this is me for 30 minutes or so telling you how much I love this and that you really need to read The Fury of the Gods. So you need to read the other 2 books. You can read it. Plus it's a big floppy paperback. The found family in here, honestly, the found family in here is some of the best found family I've ever read. Personal opinion, but it is some of the best found family, the most satisfying found family. There is like a relationship in here, and I kind of love that because it was earned. It was so earned, and that makes me That makes me happy. So anyway, read these. At least this one, see if you like it. I think you will. If you have liked any of the other things that I've liked, I think if you like Jacqueline Carey and you like Robin Hobb, you'll like John Gwynne. The characterization of people is very similar. So as I can keep gushing and going on, I'm going to stop. So yes, I will see you on Tuesday, or maybe before, because I do have maybe a thing I might want to do. I'll see you Tuesday with a weekly wrap-up.